Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Murr. I'm chairman of the House Board of Managers, and I have my vice chair, Ann Johnson, with me. Provide you a statement, and we'll take a few questions. We always knew that a 2/3 vote of the Senate, as required by the Texas Constitution, would be a challenging threshold to meet, especially in light of the millions of dollars that Mr. Paxton's apologists have spent to influence and intimidate Texas senators and Texas constituents. Still, as chairman of the House Board of Managers, I am proud of the case that we presented because it demonstrates considerable, uncontested, uncontroverted evidence of Mr. Paxton's corruption. We did our duty to bring the evidence into the sunlight through this impeachment process, and that exists for that very purpose. This trial painted an accurate and clear picture of an out-of-control Attorney General who refused to listen to the desperate warnings of his conservative lawyers that he had entrusted to help run his office. Throughout this trial, the attorneys who worked most closely with Mr. Paxton described how his actions turned their loyalty and their belief in his conservative ideals into profound disappointment that required them to act. They repeatedly tried to stop Mr. Paxton from putting his own interests and those of a friend above the interests of 30 million Texans. When Mr. Paxton refused to listen, and after he went behind their backs to try to accomplish his abuses of office, they properly voiced their concerns to law enforcement. These brave, principled public servants spoke up for what was right. They put themselves at personal and professional risk to protect the people of the state of Texas from Mr. Paxton's persistent determination to help Nate Paul at any cost. My colleagues in the Texas House and I did not take on this lightly. We fully understood the weight of impeachment and the enormity of the pressure we would face to look away from this corruption. However, we also understood the severity of that corruption, and it was our duty to listen to the highly conservative attorneys who had witnessed Nate Paul hijack the office of the Attorney General for his own gain. Further, despite countless opportunities to do so, Mr. Paxton has still never explained why he was so determined to help one person, Nate Paul, over the desperate warnings of his most trusted aides. Regardless of the results, I am proud to have defended the interests of our fellow Texans and to have stood up for integrity and propriety in public service. I am grateful to the members of the Texas House who were willing to bring Mr. Paxton's behavior to light, as well as the outstanding attorneys and staff who helped us present this case to the Texas Senate and the public. I especially want to thank my House colleagues who have served on the House Board of Managers. I also want to thank the former aides of the Attorney General who stood on principle, again, at great personal and professional expense to themselves and their families. And while I disagree with the decision of a minority of senators to excuse Mr. Paxton's abuses of office, I know that we presented a factual, credible case that honored the standard to which all elected officials should be held. And importantly, I will note that our constituents have a high regard for the oaths of office that every public official swears to. Thank you, and we'll take a few questions.
Sir, you talked about,
Right here.
you talked about how a minority of senators voted this way, but the reality is that the majority voted to acquit. You already mentioned it was going to be a tall order. You get 21 votes. No article of impeachment got more, like a simple majority. What does he say about the case that you presented, though?
I'll say it this way. We heard the Lieutenant Governor explain in the media before trial that this is not a civil trial. It was not a criminal trial. It was a political trial. And at the end of the day, you have to understand that we provided all the evidence that you would in a formal trial, encased and wrapped up in a political trial.
Chairman Murr, what would you have done differently?
I would not do anything differently. The House acted pursuant to its rules, statutes, and the Constitution. We presented a case over 2 weeks with thousands of pages of exhibits in a compressed time frame, and we met our burden of proof. But I'm not part of the jury that makes the final decision, and that was up to the Texas Senate pursuant to the Constitution. Hold on.
Retribution for the House members, especially Republicans and yourself.
Can I answer the question?
I am incredibly proud, and the people of Texas should be incredibly proud that the Texas House, in an overwhelming bipartisan manner, said that public trust was more important than politics. And the Lieutenant Governor did signal to us weeks ago that this was not going to be a civil or a criminal trial, but a political trial. And it surely was. Those that voted to acquit were wholeheartedly Republican. The House took a stand on the evidence that was to be presented. Our lawyers, the Board of Managers, presented overwhelming evidence that Ken Paxton is the most corrupt politician in the state of Texas at this time. And the Republicans in the Texas Senate just returned him to the office of top cop. I will rely on what I said on the floor of the Texas House. God help us.
Does it say anything that the Lieutenant Governor had a 2 or 3 page prepared speech ready to read at the end of this proceeding as to whether he knew what the outcome was or whether he had his thumb on the scale?
Yes, you would always believe in a trial that the judge is not aware of the outcome. But he did seem to have prepared notes ready to attack members of the House and the House process. And let me tell you, I have spent decades in law enforcement and criminal justice, and I am proud of the work that our investigators and our lawyers did, and the whistleblowers. The whistleblowers. Resounding, conservative public servants loyal to the Republican Party that at the time that they realized that criminal activity was happening by the top cop, that they went and reported it. You have not heard over the last 2 years their story, and you have not heard it because Ken Paxton ensured that you wouldn't. We were given 24 hours to try to get that to you, and we did all we could and everything we could to present all that evidence and the thousands of documents. And Chairman Murr said yesterday, here it is, the thousands of pages that you can review before coming back with your verdict. Those documents showed that there was a fraudulent construction company that was doing renovations on the Attorney General's house in June, sending countless emails to Nate Paul and pictures of the Paxton's home to Nate Paul, that they moved back in the middle of the summertime, that no invoices had ever been made, and the minute Brandon Kamek gets a cease and desist letter from those conservative, loyal Republicans who blew the whistle on crimes, within hours, Ken Paxton is texting somebody and say, can you write a $121,000 check out of my blind trust to a construction company that didn't exist under the laws of the state of Texas until the next month, and the invoice, according to the metadata, wasn't created until the next day. Tell me how you dismiss that evidence as a public and as a public official at a moment in time where this proves the hyper-partisan nature that I believe, and so does Chairman Murr, Texans are desperate for us to walk away from and to restore public trust. That is what the House did. And I will forever be proud of the work that we have done and that the House has done.
Why didn't we hear from Nate Paul and Laura Olson?
So just hypothetically, if I may explain.
Would you say it
Yeah.
again, please?
Why didn't we hear from Nate Paul and Laura Olson?
So why don't you hear from Nate Paul and Laura Olson? And if you don't mind, I'm going to hypothetically go through this because you may have seen that there were times when the criminal rules applied and there were times when the civil rules applied. As a prosecutor, I am not allowed to call somebody who wants to assert their Fifth Amendment right. I can't bring them to the stand under criminal rules. I can't do that. If I do that, it's unethical and you can be disbarred. In a civil case, you can call people all day long and they can take the stand and take the Fifth over and over again. And so in this circumstance, you saw that the criminal rules were applied to the benefit of Mr. Paxton to not have to be called by the House. And so I am proud of what the House lawyers did. I am proud, and so is Chairman Murr, of what we did. You know what we did? We followed the rules.
So is that a confirmation?
We followed the law.
Is that a
We
confirmation?
followed the rules, and I'm proud of what we did.
Is that a confirmation they were both going to take the fifth?
No, because I'm explaining what you can and cannot do in a civil and criminal trial. And I just hope that the people of Texas will know that the people that they elected from the Texas House took our job seriously. We followed the rules, we followed the ethics, and the rules that were put in place for us to do it, we followed it.
Thank you. How much of your articles are still pending? What are you going to do with those?
Thank you for your time today.
What are you going to do with those 4 articles that are still pending? Can they come back?
How much do you guys think that the millions of dollars from the defense taxes live at?